I'm going to tell a story. You guys want to hear a story about Danny? Okay. There's stories about all these dudes, but I have to pick Danny because obviously, like I said, we rolled together for so long. I'll tell you a story about the time we were new guys together, and this is to Danny's credit and my shame, which makes it even funnier. So we were brand new guys. We were on the B team because the A team was obviously the experienced guys in our seal delivery vehicle. If you don't know what that is, imagine a minivan underwater filled with water, and you're on diving apparatus while you go through this experience of riding in this thing all the way to a target. It can be anywhere from 4 to 7 hours. We talked about it on Marcus's show recently. JD and I did. Who saw that show, by the way? So we can cut to the chase. All right, cool. I saw like 10 hands. Really? Everyone go watch the daggum show. It's amazing. It's amazing. We tell some amazing stories. But I'm going to tell you one that we didn't talk about then. Danny and I were on the B team. And so we hadn't prepped for this dive, and it was a big dive. A lot of senior officers were going to watch. There's a proof of concept dive where we're going to sneak into an area, harbor. We're going to poke up next to a ship, and we're going to put something on that ship. I can't talk about what it is. We're going to put something on that ship that then we'll leave behind. And the A team was all set. They had rehearsed. They had dived. It was really, really cold water. And then they all got food poisoning. So hours before the dive, they're puking their guts out. They're off dive status. So Danny and I, as the B team, as new guys, find ourselves on deck. But we hadn't rehearsed. We hadn't done a ballast check for this really, really cold water. We didn't know how much weight we needed for our wetsuits to remain neutral in the water column. So Danny and I are in a panic. And we said, well, listen, I'd rather be heavy than light. Because if we're light, if we do the wrong amount of weight, when we jump out of the SDV to put this thing on this ship, we're going to pop to the surface and we're going to be like turtles on the surface of the water in front of these senior leaders. It'll be very embarrassing. So let's err on the side of heavy. So we did. So we get to the target about 5 hours later, really cold water, all of our wetsuits saturated with water, and we push off the SDV to go to this ship, and Danny and I just went straight to the bottom because we aired way too heavy. So now we're at the bottom in about 50 feet of water, and we're on pure oxygen rebreathing rigs. And if you don't know anything about dive physics, oxygen becomes toxic to your body at that depth. So I know that we're now breathing toxic oxygen at 50 feet depth, and we're trying to solve our problem, so we're ditching our weights, and we're ditching our weights. And we get to the point where we've ditched all of our weight, but we can't get out of the mud at 50 feet of water. And so I knew that we had weight in the back pouches of our weight vests. And so at this point, though, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking we've got to break the tension from the 50 foot and get up a little bit so we can get to this ship. So I start pointing, instead of my weights, I'm pointing to our inflatable air bottles, which feed our life vests, which give us air, but that'll go up. And if you know anything about diving, you know that air at depth as it goes up expands very, very quickly. So the last thing you should do is send off that air at 50 feet of deep, or you're going to rocket to the surface. But remember, this is my disclaimer that at 50 feet deep, the oxygen was becoming toxic, so I wasn't thinking clearly. But that's what I was thinking in this moment was the best solution to our problem. So I look at Danny, and through a mouthpiece, I'm trying to mouth what we're going on, and I say, hey, Danny, I see what needs to happen, and I think this is it. He thinks, I find out later, that I'm pointing to my back weights, and he says, yeah, that's a good idea, Brad. Let's do that. Let's ditch our back weights first. So I reach over, and I grab his vest oxygen tank while I grab mine right here, and I look him in the eyes at 50 feet in pitch black, and I see all of a sudden him look down and realize what I would exactly been saying, and his eyes got big as saucers, and he starts shaking his head no, but I was like, oh, yeah, here we go, bro. And I popped those oxygen bottles, and we rocketed to the surface. Really stupid decision. Thank God our SDV divers had dropped us underneath the boat, so by the time we're rocketing up, we stuck to the bottom of this boat, and we didn't end up on the surface. So we equalize our pressure. We find our neutral ballast. We do the mission. We plant the beacon, and off we go back to the SDV, and we're back in the aftermath, and we're doing our after-action review. And, of course, this commanding officer comes in the room, and he's like, gentlemen, that was the most professional thing I've ever seen. I was on the surface with flashlights, and I was looking, knowing exactly where you were going to go, exactly what you were going to do, where you were going to place this thing on this ship. And I looked, and I looked, and I looked, and I didn't see anything. And I turned away for a half second, turned back, and it was there, and there was not a sign of you Navy SEALs. He's like, that was unbelievably impressive. You must be the best people in the world at this. Do you have any after-action debrief points from your end? And I look at Danny, and he's like, nothing to add. Pretty seamless under the surface. I said, thanks, bro. I appreciate that.